Dina. Welcome to Virtual Sunday School. Today's lesson is Lesson 5, July 5th, 2020, Samson's Final Victory. And today's song, I've Got the Joy. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. Where? Down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart. Down in my heart to stay. And now our prayer. Repeat after me. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever. Amen. And this week's golden text, repeat after me. And Samson said, let me die with the Philistines. And he bowed himself with all his might. And the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. Judges 16 and 30. So who was Samson? Samson was chosen by God before he was born to free the Israelites from the Philistines. Samson was gifted. He had an unusual strength that was given to him from God. Samson was a judge of Israel. And who were the Philistines? Well, the Philistines were Israel's enemies. The Philistines didn't serve God. They served an idol god by the name of Dagon. God allowed the Philistines to take control of the children of Israel for 40 long years. Why? Because the children of Israel had sinned. This week's lesson talk. This week's lesson is about Samson. Samson was a judge, but before he was even born, Samson was set apart for God. God chose Samson to free the children of Israel from the bondage of the Philistines. The Philistines were enemies of the children of Israel, and they were very strong. But the God of Israel was much stronger. However, the children of Israel had fallen into sin again, and God allowed the Philistines to take control over them for 40 years. Whew! That's a long time. And the Philistines weren't being nice to them during that time either. Samson had unusual strength that was given to him by God. From birth, he was not to cut his hair, and the Bible teaches us that his long hair was the source and a sign of where his strength came from, which was God. Sadly, Samson made some wrong choices in his life. Instead of following God, there were times when he would choose to go his own way. He sinned against God, and he took for granted that God would always be there. Disobedience gets us into big trouble, just like Samson. The Philistines hated Samson because of his strength. Why? Because his strength allowed him to fight against them. And God let Samson do things to them such as burn their crops, ruin their cities, and kill many of the Philistines. One day a man found out that Samson's hair was the source of his strength. So as Samson was sleeping, the man cut his hair. Now Samson's strength was gone. When he woke up, he tried to break loose, but sadly he couldn't. The Lord had left him because of disobedience. And the Philistines are then able to capture him. They tie him up and even pluck out his eyes. Later, while captive, Samson's hair begins to grow back. One day, the Philistines are getting together in the temple of their idol god because they believe that their false god was the reason they were able to capture Samson. They wanted to celebrate what they thought was a victory. They called for Samson to be brought to them so they could make fun of him. A young boy leads Samson to the celebration since Samson is blind, and Samson tells the boy to let him feel the columns that are holding up the roof. Samson prays to the Lord to give him strength one more time so he can take revenge on the Philistines. God answers his prayer and gives Samson the strength to push the columns with all his might. Samson pushes the columns over and the temple collapses, killing all the people that were gathered. What can we learn from this? Well, sin separates us from God. We can't sin and think that God is not going to punish us. Sooner or later, he will. God simply wanted Samson to obey him and to keep his life pure and clean from sin. And you know what? Jesus wants us to do the same thing. Be sure to complete the activities in your Sunday school book and also use these questions to help you review the lesson. Question number 1. What are some things you know about Samson? Number 2. Who were the Philistines? 3. Why didn't the Philistines like Samson? Number 4. What was special about Samson's hair? 5. What did the Philistines do to Samson? And number 6. How did Samson die? Here are a few key points to remember. 1. Keep your life clean and pure for God. Number 2. Obey God and say no to things that pollute your body and soul. 3. Pray that God will help you make the right choices. And lastly, our golden text. Let's say it together. And Samson said, "Let me die with the Philistines." And he bowed himself with all his might, and the house fell upon the lords and upon all the people that were therein. Judges 16 and 30. Thanks for participating in this week's virtual Sunday school. See you next week.